Shit, man, I stay fit, man. You dig? Yes, sir. And it's not tucked in. This is tucked in. Yeah, today, March 1st, 2025. Y'all gotta stop capping on me, man. The only reason I look overweight in that picture is because I had on like 3 sweaters.
Errol Spence has begun preparations for his rematch against Terence Crawford, as he recently revealed on social media. There has been much speculation recently regarding the rematch of Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford's rematch. Seeing the recent controversy that broke out between the two fighters, the pair of former welterweight champions have made headlines repeatedly over the past few weeks. First, because of Terence Bud Crawford's claim about Errol Spence's Hall of Fame status.
Say, man, we working, man. We working. You know what I'm saying?
He ain't wake me up from a run.
Nah, bro. Nah. Hey, going on vacation not bringing your running shoes is like going on a dinner date and not bringing your wallet, man.
Oh, man.
God damn, man. We went, man. We went up, man. And we ain't missed one.
Second, because Errol Spence took his claims personally and called him out to a rematch. Crawford hasn't sounded very interested in the rematch, seeing he has his gaze fixed on Canelo Alvarez. However, in a boxing world where Saudi boxing mogul, His Excellency Turki Alalshik, is the main broker, almost anything is possible. And the fight between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence seems like something Turki Alalshik will be very much interested in. But moving on, there have also been claims regarding Turki Alalshik planning for their rematch out of the blue, as a co-main event fight in the Canelo Alvarez versus William Skull card remains a possibility. Notwithstanding, Crawford's claims renewed a rivalry that ended in one of the most brutal ways in recent boxing history. A fight that was perceived as a 50-by-50 fight suddenly became a mismatch, with Crawford dominating every second of every round, dropping Spence in as early as the second round and dropping him 2 more times before the fight was called off by the referee in the 9th round. Now, Spence has flaunted his shape, having resumed training for his fight against Crawford. He's really getting back in the ring, and he's set to confront a known demon, the same one that laid him off for 2 years. Clearly, Derek James is out of Errol Spence's camp, hence his belief in his training may have come from getting a new trainer.
I talked to Errol, I like, man, I apologize, not for what I said, but for how I acted. Because I don't believe in apologizing. If I really meant something, I'm not gonna apologize. And no, man, don't worry about that. He said because 2 days before the fight, tempers rise, everybody's, shit more. So yeah, this is what it is. When you hear people talk about you, and then when you in front of, I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it. I don't know nothing.
Not even a hint of maybe going to the rematch at 154.
Oh, I mean that part. I mean, I'm sure they already, they already signed that or whatever. But I don't know anything about that either. But I just know what they talk about. You'll see him. He won't be so.
From the very beginning, Derek James and Spence were inseparable. When the former BWAA Trainer of the Year spoke, Spence listened. As a duo, the pair enjoyed a long unified reign at 147 pounds and were 1 win away from becoming an undisputed champion. A setback against Terence Crawford in July of 2023 was thought to be nothing more than a speed bump, but it was far more than that. Following his lopsided stoppage defeat, James sued his now former fighter for upwards of $5 million in what he claims are unpaid wages. While those legal battles continue, Spence is on the lookout for a new trainer. Edwards, amongst others, is seemingly in the mix. Recently, the former #1 ranked welterweight, according to The Ring, was spotted with Edwards, leading to even more speculation. Although he's all for it, the Philadelphia-based trainer doesn't want fans and media members to start jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna get in this year. Probably October, November. Yeah, you gotta wait to hear from me. I'm looking for I'm looking for a coach right now. So
I'm gonna hand you like people, and so he said what he said or whatever. But and then even afterwards, he said really I'm just like I shouldn't have engaged.
Nothing has been decided, Edwards told Mill City Boxing. We're just cool. That's it. He was in Philly on some business and he just worked out at the gym, but Errol hasn't told me who he's picking as a trainer. We just worked out together for a couple of days. I'm not saying I wouldn't train him, and I'm not saying he's not possibly considering me, but he hasn't made a choice yet. Edwards has spent the last few years building up his stable of fighters. He currently has Caleb Plant, Julian Williams, Kyrone Davis, and a few others under his watch. From a distance, Edwards has always been an admirer of Spence. He's also curious to see how he'll perform in his new weight class at 154 pounds. So, if he did decide to entrust Edwards with his career, it would be an honor. In terms of his game, there isn't much Spence has to work on according to the longtime trainer. If their partnership were to become a reality, it wouldn't be about the X's and O's, but more so about what's in between his ears.
So yeah, I got a few names in the hat. You know, I'm out, you know, working with people and trying to see who I mesh with. And I have some news real soon. But I try to stay low as possible.
So drained, you won't be so depleted or whatever. I mean, you'll see, you know, that wasn't the issue. You know what I'm saying? Crawford fought a good fight. He had a great game plan, right? And so give it to him by his coach. So it's not like, I mean, you know, he was the better guy that day.
It's little things I can tweak, but he's already a tremendous fighter. The number one thing I think I can do for him is build up his self-esteem. Training Spence would bring even more fanfare to Edwards. It would also fatten his bank account considerably. But it isn't about that for Edwards. Having known Spence for years, there are no selfish motives attached to him. So if Spence opts to go in another direction, the love will remain the same. That's my guy. I like Errol Spence. I wish him the best. I'm never going to be mad at him if he picks somebody else. Renowned boxing trainer Stephen Edwards recently spoke about the whole Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence saga, where he made some interesting and detailed observations.
I can retire right now and be in the Hall of Fame. He couldn't. You know, like everything that I've accomplished, he's still trying to accomplish. You know.
Do you not think Spence will be in the Hall of Fame?
Right now? No, how?
Yeah, he's right, dude. He's right.
How? You know, like he fought in one division. You know,
never unified the belts.
He unified.
The boxing trainer was riddled by a reporter who said, Terence Crawford shared some interesting opinions recently. I know you have been a big supporter of Crawford's status as a great fighter, and I have a strong opposing opinion. You think Crawford is a Hall of Famer and #1 pound for pound, where I think he needs to do more, and I rate him in the top 5 because of his weak resume? In an interview, Crawford just stated that he doesn't think Errol Spence is a Hall of Famer. Spence is Crawford's best win. So if Spence is not a Hall of Famer, it proves my point and makes your point look weak. Thanks, Bud, for settling our debate. The reporter also added, Crawford also said that he thinks Manny Pacquiao was on PEDS, citing that Pacquiao stopped scoring knockouts once Floyd Mayweather asked him to do drug testing. But he forgot to mention that Floyd himself has a shady past and Floyd did USADA not VEDA, which allows for fighters to get their test results sealed. A clean fighter would never get their test results sealed, but I get it, blacks stick with blacks. He also forgot to mention that Manny sued Floyd, and Floyd settled out of court because his checkered past could have been exposed. If Floyd felt so strong about Manny being dirty, why did he settle? I know you're going to try to clean this up, but it's really no way to spin it.
He did unify.
You know,
IBF.
He unified.
WBA, was it?
He had 3.
Yeah.
He had the
but
WBC,
he didn't unify all
WBA,
4. He wasn't
IBF.
undisputed.
Huh?
He wasn't undisputed.
He wasn't. No, but what I'm saying is, they already called him a weight bully, right? He beat Kell Brook coming off of a loss, an eye injury. You know, he beat Sean Porter.
In all fairness, he had to go over there to get that.
In response, Bredman began, okay, I see you came with all guns blazing towards me because of something Terence Crawford said, but I'm not going to shy away from any smoke. Crawford's opinion is Crawford's opinion. I think Manny is a terrific fighter, one of the best I've ever seen, possibly my favorite of the last era. But there was a cloud of suspicion over his incredible run. It also didn't help that Freddie Roach made a public comment that Alex Ariza would give Manny stuff and he didn't know what it was. So Crawford is not the only person in boxing who suspected Manny of being a PED user. He's just saying it out loud. He continued, personally, I am on the fence. The reason being is Manny did sue Floyd. When you sue someone, you can expose yourself because of the full disclosure that's required in the discovery and litigation. I've been sued before.
You know what I mean? That's a good win. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm hating on him or, you know,
I understand
things like that, but I honestly don't know if he make it to the Hall of Fame with the...
Referring to Crawford's claims on Manny, seeing a fight between the pair never materialized, he said, Manny took a chance because if he was dirty and they went to trial, all types of things could have been exposed through old test samples, bank transactions, etc. So that turn of events gave me pause in condemning Manny Pacquiao as a dirty fighter. Okay, so now you're bringing up the brothers thing. I didn't miss that shot. You guys have a way of doing that, and I don't know what you expect to get out of me.
Terence Crawford goes on an interview, states that, you know, Errol Spence right now at this moment in time with the accolades that he has probably won't go to the Hall of Fame. You were talking about devaluing your opponents. What do you think about that comment?
Oh, man.
Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame with the accolades he has now, first of all?
You know, I'm a big fan.
He then moved on to Errol Spence, who could be the newest guy in his stable soon. Now let's talk about Errol Spence. You're correct, you're probably one of the guys who gets mad that I have Terence Crawford, #1 pound for pound. So you think that my stance is discredited because Crawford himself says Spence is not a Hoff and Spence is Crawford's best win? You know you have a point, but it's not as simple as you make it sound. Let me be clear. While Crawford is indirectly discrediting his best win, his opinion is not the be-all end-all. Crawford doesn't vote for who gets in the Hall of Fame. Crawford may think he's the best fighter ever. It doesn't mean it's true because he thinks it.
Of Terence Crawford's status in boxing. I get a lot of flack when I say he's the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world and he's a Hall of Famer. And people always come at me and they say, damn, man, he don't have no resume. And I'm like, bro, he's special. There's a writer here in Philadelphia by the name of George Hansen. And around 2011, 2012, we was talking. And this guy's a pretty knowledgeable guy about boxing. And he was saying to me that
if Crawford said he was the best fighter ever, he would be called delusional. But since he has an opinion on Spence, that fits the narrative boxing fans like. So here is where I'm at on Crawford's resume and Errol Spence's Hoff credentials. I think Crawford has a solid but not great resume. He may not have many P4P or Hoff names on his resume, but he has fought several ring-rated fighters and ex-world champions, which is also another way to assess a resume. Crawford has been consistent in his performances for a decade with no controversial results. The Madrimov result was not controversial in my opinion.
Adrian Broner, and it was another fighter, was you know, the future and whatever. And I said, man, there's a guy named Terence Crawford that's better than Broner and whoever else he was talking about. But let me just say Broner. Broner was the more popular guy at the time. And he hadn't heard of Terence Crawford. Whenever he see me, he'll be like, damn, bro, you called that, man. My God.
Who, Broner?
Yeah. No, I wasn't saying nothing bad about Broner.
Edwards moved on, saying, Crawford also avoided a great deal in his career. So while I don't give him credit for the fighters he missed, I also don't hold it against him as hard as I would with a fighter who ducks an available threat. Crawford doesn't have any blatant ducks. Some may say he would have fought Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz, but I don't think it's gotten to the point of a duck. Talking about the Crawford and Pacquiao fight that never happened, Edward pointed that Crawford never fought Manny Pacquiao while they were at top rank. Manny was the A side, and I can't blame Crawford for that. Crawford also never fought Danny Garcia or Keith Thurman, who were with PBC. But he did fight Sean Porter and Errol Spence. I don't blame him for that either, because the PBC welterweights fought each other first, then they allowed Crawford to get into the unofficial tournament. Top Rank did the same thing a few years before when Tim Bradley, Manny Pacquiao, Juan Manuel Marquez, Brandon Rios, and Mike Alvarado mixed and matched a series of fights. So that's the business of boxing, and I can't blame Crawford for that. But again, I'm also not going to give him credit for fights that he didn't fight.
I was just saying, yo, it's another guy at those weights that's actually better than him. It's going to be way better than him. Watch and see. And it was Terence Crawford. So he hadn't heard of Terence Crawford like in 2011, 2012. So we having this conversation. He's like, damn, like you called that. I had seen like some video of Crawford and I got cool with Red and Bomac. And I'm like, damn, this dude's the real deal. So fast forward, I always get a lot of flack for my high praise.
He then admitted Crawford's claims as a Hall of Famer, but doubted if he was in the level of Floyd and Pacquiao just yet. Crawford stopped both Spence and Porter, and in my opinion, Spence established himself as the best welterweight of that specific PBC crop. I believe that Crawford is a legit great fighter and first ballot Hall of Famer. Crawford won his super fight. He won titles from 135, 154. He unified 2 divisions and became ring champion in 3 divisions, and he's undefeated in title fights. I think his Hall of Famer claim is clear. At this point, we need to see what tier of greatness he's on. I don't rate him over guys like Leonard and Mayweather, but his career is still going. So let's see where his next few fights take us. Moving on to Spence, he did a comparative analysis with his career and other fighters' career. As for Spence, I think he had an excellent career, but the question is he a Hoff? Well, let's look. Let's take the top welterweights since 1980 and let's look at who made the Hoff, who didn't, and how they match up with Spence.
Of Crawford's ability as a fighter. So, you're right. I can't even deny it. Crawford did devalue his best win by saying Errol Spence is not a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to say I wish he didn't say it, because he could say whatever he wants and that's his opinion. But it is kind of weird that I've always thought Crawford was a great fighter. I've always thought he was a Hall of Famer for the last few years. And obviously Errol Spence is his best win. And for him to come out and say that his best win is not a Hall of Famer.
Since 1980, Carlos Palomino, Pepino Cuevas, Roberto Duran, Wilfred Benitez, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Donald Curry, Buddy McGirt, Pernell Whitaker, Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, Shane Mosley, Tim Bradley, Floyd Mayweather, Miguel Cotto, and Manny Pacquiao have made the Hoff. Marlon Starling, Vernon Forrest, Ike Quarty, Meldrick Taylor, Zab Judah, and Simon Brown are the top welterweights who have not made it yet. Based on his comparisons, Spence wasn't going to look out of place in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, Leonard, Duran, Hearns, Mayweather, Trinidad, De La Hoya, Whitaker, and Pacquiao are on a special tier. The next tier is Cotto, Benitez, and Mosley. Then you have guys like Curry, Cuevas, Bradley, and Palomi number. In my humble opinion, Spence was better than Cuevas and Palomi number, and he's close to being equal to Curry, Bradley, and Mosley.
All of the people that give me shit about his resume, they I have friends call me up like, see, I told you overrating him. Even he say Earl is not that. And I'm like, damn, I guess I got to keep my mouth shut, because if he say it, he is devaluing his best win. Listen, Terence Crawford's a smart guy. He's very successful. He made a lot of money. And he don't have to agree with me, but I just think that fighters should not put down their opponents, because when
It's hard to assess Benitez and Cotto because they did more than Errol in other weight divisions. Errol has been a welterweight his entire career. I also believe Errol did more than Vernon Forrest, who has a thin resume outside of Shane Mosley. We also have to remember that Sean Porter is on the ballot and Errol beat him head to head. As I'm typing, I'm trying to assess this forensically and most of all objectively. I will say that because Errol was champion for 6 years, and he ascended to what I believe was number 4 pound for pound. Errol unified 3 belts while scoring wins over Kell Brook, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, and Mikey Garcia. I think Errol has a real claim to be a Hall of Famer. He may not be a first ballot Hoff, but his claim is reasonable considering all of the details. To round off his take, he highlighted the natural factors that haunted Spence's claims as a Hall of Famer.
Beat him, it lessens the accomplishment. But if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Personally, I don't want to crown myself a historian, but I know a lot about the history of boxing. Errol Spence has a very, very reasonable chance to get into the Hall of Fame. He unified 3 belts. He was champion for 6 years. He made it to top 4 or 5 pound for pound, which is an accomplishment. He has some very good wins.
So there are a few things working for Errol and a few things working against him. What works for Errol is he unified 3 belts. He had a lofty pound for pound status. He beat Porter, Brook, and both Garcias. Sean Porter's nomination to be on the ballot also helps because Errol beat Sean. Tim Bradley's induction in the Hoff helps because Errol is comparable to Bradley in terms of ability and accomplishment. And last but not least, Terence Crawford. If Crawford keeps racking up great wins, and if Spence's only loss is Terence Crawford, then...
Over Kell Brook, Mikey Garcia, Danny Garcia, and Sean Porter. He's an Olympian, and he only lost to one fighter, which was a great fighter. I don't know if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, like soon as he gets on the ballot, like the Mayweather, Pacquiao, those kind of guys. But he has a reasonable shot to get in. If you look at the best welterweights over the last 40 years, he's somewhere.
What works against Errol is how decisive he lost to Crawford. The other issues he has is fighters like Ike Quartey, Marlon Starling, and Simon Brown are not in. Some media who vote may believe that Quartey, Brown, and Starling are equal to Errol as fighters. And if they aren't in, then Errol shouldn't be in either. After analyzing everything, I think Errol has a good chance to be inducted once he's eligible. And that's all for now. For the very best updates on news, moments, events, and actions in the world of boxing, stay connected with us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications to get notified when we drop quality contents like this. Until next time, peace out.